Today's question is, police officers of Reddit, what was your oh shit moment?
Was doing a welfare check at a house for a suicidal male. Only person living at the house, car and driveway, and house was locked up. Gathered some more info and was told where a key was. Opened the door, announced myself and starting searching the house expecting to find a dead body. Opened a closet door and the guy was hiding in there with a rifle next to him. If he wanted me dead, I wouldn't be typing this. Dude was having some issues. Sat and talked for about half an hour. Told me he heard me but didn't want to talk to anyone. Got him the help he needed. I pulled up on a teen sleeping in a vehicle at the end of a country road. When I ran the license plate, I found out that he was reported as a runaway. The doors on the vehicle were locked, so I knocked on the window to wake him up. Once he woke up and realized what was going on, he shot himself in the mouth with a rifle he had hidden under his blanket. Rough way to start my shift. We were looking for a guy who stole guns from his ex and found him under a pile of clothes in a closet at a different house. Unfortunately, there was like 7 kids sleeping in the same room, so I start getting them out of there while my partner cuffs the guy who is pretending to sleep. We decide to drag him out and I go to move the mattress to get it out of the way, and we find the stolen guns under where the kids were sleeping. A law prof in Australia spent 20 years as a cop before becoming a lawyer and eventually teaching. In explaining the battered wife syndrome defense to murder, he told a story of a call to a little old lady's house where she had said on the phone that she had killed her husband. Before this incident, he didn't really understand why it existed. Why doesn't the woman just leave? Why doesn't she just go to someone else's house? Prof shows up to the door and is greeted by a little old lady saying, "Come in. Would you like some tea?" He goes in, and she starts putting some cakes on a tray and pouring tea. He wonders if she's all there. He asked, "So you said that you killed your husband on the phone. Would I be able to see him?" She directs him to the living room where the old man was on a lazy boy chair, bottle in hand, and a tomahawk in his skull. Meanwhile, old lady is asking if he takes sugar or milk in his tea. The prof said at this moment he realized why the defense of battered wife existed. The drunk old guy had been beating her for years, controlled all the money and didn't let her have friends. She had nowhere to go even if she left him. So on this day, after saying he was going to beat her if his sports team lost, she took matters into her own hands. He said this was the moment he realized that sometimes there are situations where life doesn't make sense and people take the only way they can see. This happened August of last year. Was about 1 to 2 in the morning when a 911 hang-up call came in where all that was heard was screaming and swearing. I was the closest unit, riding alone as my partner had been voluntold for another assignment that set of days. So when I got out into the area, I was initially waiting for backup. However, as I was walking up to the house, I heard several voices screaming. Rushing up to the house, the first thing I noticed was blood. Everywhere. The floor, the walls, the door, all covered to shoulder height. A distraught woman screamed and pointed me towards the living room. Once I get into the living room, I see a male and female on a couch, both covered in blood. The male had a massive laceration on his right forearm, and the female had taken a belt and snake wrapped it around his arm to try and stop the bleeding. Seeing how the belt was applied, I knew it wasn't doing anything to stop the blood flow. So I pulled out my tourniquet and as I prepped it said to the guy, "This is gonna hurt like hell, but it'll stop the bleeding." I applied the tourniquet just above the top of his bicep and knew it was on properly when he told me his hand had started to go numb. It was at that point I noticed a second deep gash on his tricep that went down to the bone. It took EMS about 15 minutes to get to the house, and the paramedic made it abundantly clear that had I not applied the tourniquet, the male would have bled out long before they were able to get there. In the end, turns out the guy had come home drunk and forgot his keys, climbed up to a second-story window and punched his way into the house, with near-deadly results. *Edit. Removed am, as it was redundant. Edit 2 apparently tour is confusing. A suicidal girl was dropped off at the hospital. Myself and my colleague were there escorting another prisoner from custody. This girl came and spoke to our prisoner. They'd never before, but they were just making idle hospital waiting room chit-chat. The girl vanishes, not bothered. We don't know why she's there. Who she is, we just assumed she'd gone somewhere else. After a while, our prisoner says, "That girl has been in the toilet a long time. Perhaps she's having a big poo?" We laugh and then realize it had been a while. So I start banging the door. No answer. Door locked. I unscrew the lock and she sat there, wheezing and not super responsive. My colleague goes for help and a nurse comes and unzips her jacket, and she's made a ligature from a sock and she's blue and not breathing. I managed to cut it off. It was on tight, we couldn't get scissors in to cut it. And she's taken through to get checked, now breathing again. My partner goes with her. I'm stood by the door with my prisoner getting air. The whole thing is stressful. This happened in the middle of a busy A&E, ER for you Yanks. People are just looking at me. Next thing I know, a healthcare assistant is running out to me because this girl is now becoming violent and my partner needs help. I can't leave my prisoner and I can't leave my partner to get beat up. I chose to go for my partner. This girl is smashing her head into a wall, kicking, hitting, and trying to bite. It took 3 of us to get her calm. I barely managed to get the assistant's shout out before going in. Radio signal is poor to non-existent. Luckily, the prisoner sat patiently in the waiting room whilst we dealt with that. They weren't cuffed, they could have ran, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. On top of all the stress that day caused, I didn't really have the oh shit moment until I was in my car on the way home and I realized a girl nearly died 5 feet away from me. I wouldn't gave known if it wasn't for the prisoner paying attention to where their new friend went. Dad is a newly retired cop, 30 years on the force. He has a couple gems that he has told me. Last one is pretty sad, so if you have any type of suicidal tendencies, consider this a trigger warning. While working as a patrolman, he had a couple encounters with people high on PCP. The first was a lady who cut her entire anus out and ripped the inside part out. She woke up the next day with no recollection of what happened. She will have to be on a colostomy bag for the rest of her life. Another PCP story. Guy was butt naked in the middle of the road, sweating profusely. For those who don't know, PCP raises your body temp, so people get naked because they are hot. The guy used a broken glass bottle to cut his genitalia off, balls, and everything. He ended up bleeding out before EMS arrived. Sad one. Thanksgiving morning, Dad worked a night shift and was home by 6 a.m. I came to the kitchen to help cook for Thanksgiving and see him staring off into space, something bothering him. Turns out there was a bad car accident and the car caught fire. The woman inside was stuck because her seatbelt had melted to her. Dad went to pull her out and described how her skin had just crisped over, so when he pulled on her to free her, the skin just kind of peeled off. They eventually got her out, but she had suffered severe burns and was permanently disfigured. Dad has ended up getting burned up pretty good too on his arms. She ended up surviving but took her life about 6 months later. That one my dad couldn't really ever shake. I think he blames himself for not getting her out sooner. That kind of heartache comes with the job, I suppose. Anyway, those are some memorable stories. He's got tons more, but those 3 come to mind right away. Witness to autopsies. Watching the me pull the testicles out from the inside. Or the needle in the eyeball to get samples of eyeball fluid. Or the sight, sounds, and smells of the bone saw cutting through the skull. And the following suction sounds of the top of the skull being pulled off. Or check welfare call. Call to check on a 50-year-old lady who hadn't been seen for a few days. Got to the apartment, looked through a couple windows after no response at the door. Last window I checked had to try and get my bearings while looking through half-open blinds. Realized she was there dead in bed. Eyes open. I have seen plenty of dead bodies prior to this call, but that one gave me the heebie-jeebies. Or another dead body call. Died in his sleep. I had been in the bedroom for a couple of hours making notifications and requests for remains removal. A belt slid off the treadmill and hit the treadmill belt pretty loudly. There was no reason for that belt to fall off that treadmill. Cops get PTSD too. Edit. Shit. I have so many. Patting down a male arrestee for a female officer. Dude was passed out at a green light. He was already cuffed. Right as I got down to his right ankle, I heard it. It sounded like a garbage disposal choking on pudding. Dude shit himself right there. I didn't say anything as he sat down in the back seat. The female officer went to the opposite side of the back seat to assist in buckling him in and gagged. Oh God, what's that smell? She said. Me, he just shit himself. LOL. I was in a community policing unit. Right as me and about 25 other community policing officers got out of a meeting, a report of a homicide came out just blocks from our station. Dispatch advised we were looking for a red truck. A fellow officer called out he had a red truck nearby. I was first there as he was pulling the driver out at gunpoint. As we approached him and got him cuffed, I turned and saw the biggest traffic jam of cop cars I had ever seen. Later that day, I watched a traffic cam recording of the traffic stop. I lost count at 53 cop cars coming to back us up. More of a holy shit than an oh shit. And this is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to comment an anecdote or experience similar to the topic of the video. Leave your like, share if you like the video, and lastly don't forget to activate the little bell so you don't miss any of our daily videos. Bye bye.